make it big enough because I can't read it. I still can't read it without my glasses. So. Good afternoon, everybody. We're gonna get the ceremony started while you guys are finishing your dessert. I appreciate everyone coming out this afternoon. I'm Dave Donaldson, and I'm pleased to represent the Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission for this ceremony. The Lyles-Simpson Award is given annually and is awarded to the person for outstanding contributions in marine resources of the Gulf of Mexico. Those actions can be for research, management, enforcement, legal, or legislative accomplishments. It is my distinct pleasure to present the 2019 Lyles-Simpson Award to Mr. William Borden Wallace. One of the more enjoyable tasks as executive director is notifying the winner of the Lyles-Simpson Award. When I contacted Borden, he was extremely appreciative and mentioned that he believed the only accolade that he hadn't received during his career was receiving this award. So I'm very, very pleased and proud to be involved in presenting the award to him. And as you can see from the program that everyone has, he's certainly most deserving of this award. So, Borden's been around the water for all his life. He was born in North Carolina, attended Duke University. I will refer you to the photo that someone told me. I thought he was the actual mascot for Duke, but that is a doctored photo. So. But he moved to the Gulf Coast in the early 70s, and he and his family have a long history with the Menhaden fishery, and represents the third generation being involved in Menhaden harvesting and processing. In addition to working with the Menhaden industry, he's been involved on numerous boards and committees and task force, including MAFAC, and of course the chairman of our illustrious Menhaden Advisory Committee. And in 2011, he was named the Orange King in Plaquemines Parish, and that's the picture on the front of the program.
I have an orange tie.
On his orange tie. He officially retired last year in April, but continues to stay connected to the fisheries world as president of the Patronus Consulting. So I've been with the commission for almost 30 years, and my responsibilities have obviously changed over that time. However, one of the jobs I still do is I get to put together this program, and I really enjoy doing it. Because I always learn something new about the recipient, and Borden was no different. Did you know that Borden was the coxswain of his high school rowing team, which won first place in Division I of the state in 1964? He was a 4-year letterman in pole vaulting, very impressive, in high school. And that Sarah's dad was a professional baseball player. So
that's true.
And then last but not least, he has been the winner of numerous times of the coveted Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission Rubber Chicken Award for Golf Excellence. I wanted to present the old or the original chicken to you, but unfortunately it had since disintegrated, and I have it in a bag, but it doesn't really represent a chicken or resemble a chicken, so I decided that I wouldn't do that. So before I open the floor to comment, the floor to comments, I'd like to present Borden with a small token of our appreciation. The commission recently passed a resolution in recognition of all your years of service to the Menhaden industry as well as the commission. So let me get that resolution. I will read it to you. Whereas Borden M. Wallace of the Empire Menhaden Company, I don't know if you guys can hear me, so. Louisiana, Daybrook Fisheries and West Bank Fishing have been an active member of the State Federal Fisheries Management Committee's Menhaden Advisory Committee for 41 years of continuous service. Whereas he assisted the MAC, the Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission, and NOAA in critical data use for evaluating and assessing the Gulf menhaden resources in the northern Gulf of Mexico. Whereas he served as the first chair of MAC after the formation in 1977 and served an additional 4 times over his 41 years as a member, missing only two meetings. And whereas he participated in 8 regional stock assessments for the Gulf menhaden, whereas he was a contributor to the original Gulf Menhaden Fishery Management Plan completed in 1982 and 4 subsequent revisions, therefore be it resolved that the Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission wholeheartedly thanks Mr. Wallace for his dedication and service to the MAC, given on the 16th day of October of the year our Lord, 2019. Signed by our chairman, Joe Spraggins.
Thank you.
So I also need to note that in addition to the resolution, there is the parchment, which is a historical record of all the chairmen starting in 1977 through 2010. It should be noted that this is not the original parchment that was lost in Hurricane Katrina, unfortunately. But hopefully, now that it's under glass, it will keep it as safekeeping and won't get lost again. So, but
It will not be lost.
so we appreciate you.
Thank you so
Everything
much.
that you've done.
Appreciate it, Dave.
So at this point, I'm gonna open the floor to comments. I think Steve's got a mic, so if you want to make some comments, share a story about Borden, please raise your hand, and Steve will bring you the mic.
Borden, I don't have any funny stories or anything really worth relaying to the rest of the group that would bring humor, but I do have greetings from Bon Secour, Alabama, and from the seafood community over in Alabama, wishing you well and feeling proud about someone from the commercial side getting this award, and specifically John Ray Nelson sends his best and his approval for your getting this. That doesn't come easy. You got to realize that. But I wanted to say you're someone I've always looked up to as someone who comports themselves with a lot of professionalism, disagreeing without being disagreeable often at these meetings, and that's something that I've learned from and had to grow into, and have looked to you for guidance in that area, and I appreciate your leadership in that respect. And you have been the man in the arena for a long time, and those of us in the seafood business and the commercial community that have looked to those like you, like Mike Wazan, who won this award several years ago, we appreciate very much your struggle, and glad that you didn't listen to the critics and kept fighting and became successful. So thanks and congratulations.
Corky, you may not have the mic.
Yeah, well.
How much?
Sarah, congratulations. Susan, congratulations. Chuck, Borden's son, unfortunately could not be here. You're the 36th recipient of this award, if my math's right, if I can count correctly, and the 8th industry person to get it. John Ray Nelson was one of the early recipients. This award has been given to senators, executive directors, directors, secretaries, department heads, all sorts of important people. But we've never given it to a king. A king. We can only go downhill from, you know, and of course, the Queen sitting on your left. Hard to believe Borden and I have known, worked together. I've had a lot of respect for him over the years, for some 50 years. And I could tell a lot of stories. I had prepared some notes in my home office, and it would probably taken 15, 20 minutes, which y'all wouldn't want to hear all that. And Nancy forgot to tell me to bring the notes, so I forgot them. So just a couple of stories. One, biologists that I work with, for the most part, did not like to interface with commercial fishermen. You couldn't get them to talk to commercial fishermen. Commercial fishermen had horns. I don't know. It just wasn't a good relationship. And many, many years ago, the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries in Louisiana and the Menhaden industry decided, hey, let's try and have an annual meeting. Prior to the start of the season, the department had some people doing some work on projections of what the season may be like and so on and so forth. We would meet on an island. You either had to get there by boat or airplane. So you isolated, and the industry and the technical people were able to get together, and it got to be an annual affair, and I really think it benefited both sides, and Borden was very instrumental in helping to set that up. The second story I'll tell is the Gulf Council, in all its infinite wisdom and knowledge, many years ago decided we need to meet in each state's capital to talk about how important we are to the state legislators. Well, so we meet in Austin, we meet in Baton Rouge, Montgomery, and so on. And each state had to outdo the other one with the big soiree they put on at the governor's mansion or wherever and all that. So when it came to Louisiana, we had it in Baton Rouge at the governor's mansion. And when you deal with representatives of the people, they like adult beverages. And we in government can't spend money on adult beverages legally. So a call was made, and Borden supplied, allowed us to get adult beverages. The Gulf Council, after that function, it was a very, Ed and Becky were at that function. It was at the mansion. Governor Treen was, anyway, the Menhaden industry in Borden supplied enough alcoholic beverages. I think after that party was over, the Gulf Council had adult beverages for the next 4 or 5 years. But anyway, Borden, really proud to acknowledge you for this award. You certainly deserve it. Best of luck to you and your family. Hail King Wallace.
Well, to those of you that don't know me personally, I'm Ed Swindell, and my name is Edward Wallace Swindell. Borden and I are distant cousins, and I've been with him for many years, since he first came into the Menhaden industry as a worker in the Menhaden industry. His family was in it for many years, and I want to tell you, it's been and we worked in and out together at times. But one of the most important things that he did for us was after Katrina that I remember the most, and that was getting those boats off of the highway down at Empire. I don't know if you saw the signs of the boats after Katrina, that they were sitting on top of the highway, and Borden managed to get with a company that wanted more than they should, but he got with another company and was able to get those boats lifted up and rolled off into the water without even, you couldn't even tell that the marsh nearby was even damaged. It was a wonderful thing. Borden, I think you did a tremendous job in managing that. as well as everything else that went on around that hurricane for that plant. And those of you with Daybrook Fisheries, you got to appreciate the fact that Borden was able to get everything done that we could at that plant and still kept me sane during that time. But Borden, I appreciate it, appreciate everything all the times we've been together with you and your wife and your daughter and your son, and it's been a wonderful time, and I do appreciate having the opportunity to work with you. Congratulations.
So we will now let Borden tell a few Corky stories.
No. I'll preface these remarks by saying that I cry at the Hallmark Hall of Fame commercials. So if I get emotional about this at the end, I apologize in advance. And Sarah told me, she said, look, if you get that feeling coming on, just look at somebody you don't know. And the only people in the room that I don't know are the Coast Guard guys, and they all just left. So I'm not really sure. But Chris Nelson, this is a mutual admiration society. I've always respected you and your family, a very distinguished family in the fishing business. And when Dave told me that I was going to be the recipient, I did start crying in the car. I was on the way to the mountains. I had to look up and find out who nominated me. I was kind of selfish, and it was Chris Nelson. So it was particularly meaningful to me in that his father did receive this award, one of the early ones, actually. So it was just the Charlie Lyles Award at that time. And Corky, you're right. I'm not any of those things. I never was enforcement. I'm never on a golf council like Ed. I've never been a commissioner. And I said, well, I wonder what in the world. And then it dawned on me, having come to this meeting for 48 years, I said, this is the first time the Lyles-Simpson Award has been given for perfect attendance. I was really young when I met Charlie Lyles, and he was very savvy about the politics of fishery management because it was all in the early stages of development. And he gave us a lot of advice, and to me personally, he gave me a lot of guidance. I was a really young man when I became the first chairman of the MAC. It was called the Menhaden Management Development Group then, whatever. And he was not a man of a lot of words, but when Charlie spoke, you really needed to hear what he had to say. Larry Simpson was younger than me, but like Charlie, Larry didn't have a lot of words, but he had very good guidance. He was very politically savvy also in the later stages of management. So whenever Larry had something to say, you needed to listen. But Larry also had a brighter side to him that you might not know. When we'd have a Menhaden advisory committee meeting, Larry would always come in, like Dave does, and sit on the periphery of the tables. And one time, Dr. Condrey of LSU had done a bycatch study on Menhaden. And he was so thrilled. He was telling us how he'd pulled a Jack Crevalle, or a Crevalle Jack, however you like to call it, out of the middle of a set of about 50 tons of Menhaden. He gutted the fish, and he said, and the stomach contents are all Menhaden. Larry raised his hand. He got the floor. He said, Richard, you know, if I stood outside of McDonald's and gutted the first person coming out of the door, it'd probably have hamburger as a gut content. So it really is an honor to receive this award, named for two great gentlemen. And so back to why I'm standing here, I looked over the reasons that Dave talked about, and it dawned on me that Mike Wazan from the oyster industry, there's some shrimp people, some other people, and I said, you know, really, I think the commissioners felt it was time to honor somebody in the Menhaden industry. And so I'd like to take a little more time than a lot of you might want, but most of you here in the early stages of our plan development were either not born, or you were children, or you were in school. There's only a few people here that might know some of the things I'm going to bring up. So if you'll bear with me, in the early 70s, there were a lot of concerns on the minds of the Menhaden companies. We started fishing way too early in April and sometimes late March in Mississippi. And then we fished way into November in Texas and Louisiana when the fish were trying to move offshore to spawn. And we just felt like that was not a good thing, so we approached National Marine Fisheries Service and said, look, if you were to set a season on Menhaden, what dates would you have? And so they came back to us, and the dates were pretty close to what all the Menhaden companies felt would be a good season to keep us from starting too early and fishing too late. And so we went to the Louisiana legislature, actually the commission, and they set the Menhaden season from the third Monday in April to the second Tuesday in October. It's kind of strange, but we lived with that for a number of years. And after several iterations and Mississippi following suit, we still have that season today. And what's important that I want you to understand is that was an industry asking the states for a season, not the states telling us we had to have a season. Another concern was the growing number of vessels in the Gulf. At a National Fish Meal and Oil Association meeting, that was a trade association we had in Williamsburg, we went to the then Deputy Director of NOAA, back then he was called the National Marine Fisheries Service still. His name was Robert Schoening, and we asked him to implement limited entry on the Gulf Menhaden. They came back and said that the feds could not do that. So over a number of years, purely as a gentleman's agreement, the industry came to grips with it, and since the early 80s, the number of vessels have continued to drop. Well, they're pretty level now, but anyway, we dropped the number of vessels, which greatly reduced fishing effort. And again, that was initiated by the industry and not by the states. At that same time, there was a great concern we had because foreign fishing was occurring quite a bit in the United States, and we were worried that some trawlers would come in midwater trawl in the off season and catch up a lot of the spawning stock, and we might not know about it. And in the subsequent coastal harvest we would end up really damaging the stock. So our industry actually went and lobbied Congress. We testified at congressional hearings to extend the U.S. economic zone to 200 miles, and of course that was followed quickly in 1976 by the passage of the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which ended up creating the Fishery Management Councils. We were trying to decide as to what avenue we should use for management. And Charlie Lyles came to us, and I can tell you that he was very adamant that we should go the route of the interjurisdictional fisheries. Let the states manage us and not the feds. And I think that was a very good choice. And the management committee put together and in 1977 finalized the Menhaden Management Plan, which I believe was the first one, followed shortly by the Shrimp Plan. Our meetings were very business-oriented, but we had some lighter moments, not like the one that Larry did gutting the hamburgers, but we had 5 companies, and 3 of them had plants on the Atlantic coast. And so they would fly to the airport. So the logical venue for us was to meet at the Airport Hilton in New Orleans. And Standard Products of Moss Point, Mississippi had their representative was named Jim Nelson. And he lived in Kilmarnock, Virginia. And he told us about how some neighbors of his decided they were going to come to New Orleans for their 25th wedding anniversary. And they knew that Jim came to New Orleans all the time. So they asked Jim where he liked to eat. What was his favorite restaurant? He said, well, I always eat at the Airport Hilton. Well, you can imagine, they stayed at the Royal Orleans, right in the heart of the French Quarter. They took, on the actual date of their anniversary, they took a 30-minute cab ride to the airport, a 30-minute cab ride back, and Jim reported they never spoke to him again. Another concurrent issue in the 70s was the exploitation of red drum. Most of you now probably remember Paul Prudhomme had developed blackened drum, and prices for red drum skyrocketed. So the Menhaden industry leaders got together, and another gentleman's agreement, we decided that if a vessel captain or an airplane pilot set or directed a set on a school of red drum, they would be terminated or suspended. And I think, Ed Swindell, you probably remember that that actually happened with one captain of a boat. So there's a lot of things going on at that time that the industry was initiating, and you all know how hard it is to do data collection. In 1978, the industry implemented a voluntary collection of catch statistics in the way of our Captain's Daily Fishing Report. And the first year that it was implemented, over 75% of all sets made in the Gulf of Mexico were recorded. Today, it's regularly at or near 100%, and NOAA reports that the field accuracy of those is in excess of 95%. I'm happy I was able to serve as chairman of the MAC for the first 2 years of plan implementation, as well as 3 more times that Dave mentioned. And other chairmen include J.Y. Christmas and Corky Perrette, both of whom were Lyles-Simpson Award winners, or recipients. I don't know if we won this thing. I think the commission approved his nomination. And then since the initial plan in 1977, there have been 5 revisions, and the Gulf Menhaden has endured several CDARs and a GDAR. Fecundity is rising, fishing mortality is declining, and stock biomass is increasing. I believe the early leaders of this industry set the stage for the word sustainability when it was not even a catchword yet. The industry really initiated a lot, and I'm standing here as a representative, but there are plenty of other people that would be equally deserving. So a lot went on in the early management years, and I believe the industry rose to the occasion. We now have new owners in the harvesting and processing section. They and the state agency managers will face issues of climate change, rising sea level, ecosystem shifts, and feeding the world. And I challenge them to respect the Gulf Menhaden fishery as we did, and I think you'll find that for generations to come, that fishery will remain healthy. And that's when I need the Coast Guard. I can't say enough about the personal rewards I received. Read that for me.
I cannot say enough about the personal rewards I've had from working with all the commission staff, the commissioners, the fisheries and social scientists, state and federal agency scientists and managers, other Menhaden companies, and particularly my coworkers over the last 48 years. And I especially want to thank my wife Sarah, son Chuck, and daughter Susan for putting up with my bitching and moaning, but also sharing in my joys of my career. I thank all of you so much for this recognition. So, in closing, before I present the award, I believe all the comments, the resolution, and that were described in the qualities and commitment capture why Borden is named this year's Lyles-Simpson Award recipient, and I take great pride in presenting him with his distinguished award. On behalf of the Commission, I want to say thank you, Borden, for all you've done.
Appreciate it, Dave. Oh, that was it. Oh, wow, one of those things.
So, Mississippi Gulf Coast is famous for Walter Anderson. He's was kind of a mainstay here, little this is a picture of, unfortunately, he never did paint a Menhaden. But as we were trying to pick it out, he's
If you gutted that bird,
I guarantee you, there's a Menhaden in there. So, we have a plaque that says to William Borden Wallace, Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission, Lyles-Simpson Award winner, October 16th, 2019. So, hopefully you'll display this proudly, and we appreciate everything you've done.
I will. And pelicans are a godsend to the pogie industry because they help the captains find where the fish are. I asked one time, I said, how do you do that? He said, well, if one pelican hits, he could be on the edge of the school and I'd maybe completely miss it. He said, if two of them hit, you draw a line, you're going to get better, but if you got three or more of them, you know right where the fish are. And then after the set is made, they all get on the float line and gorge themselves with menhaden. So it's a real symbiotic relationship that we have. And so you couldn't pick out a better picture. It's my favorite bird. I have them in my house, not live. And so that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. So I want to thank everyone, thank Borden and his family, and we will reconvene the TCC general session in about 15 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Even with my long-winded comments.
So we'll get some photos with y'all.
Oh, yeah? Okay, sure.
Where's the